All right. I think I got it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a weird Swede does weird shit in his living room. Except in this case, we're actually in the kitchen at my little reel station, or at least I like to call it. Um, I want to talk to you about the Cast-x2, the Seasir Cast-x2. I got it about 2 days ago. I have not yet had the chance to take it outside and actually fish with it because the season is kind of just starting. Uh, I've had my first session a couple of days ago. I tried some fishing, but it's still too cold and actually too windy in my parts of Sweden here, so it was a bit hard, at least from shore. Um, anyway, I wanted to dive into the what do you call it, the pros and cons of this reel and tell you all about it so that you know if you'll appreciate it or not. Because as many of you might know by now, there are a lot of great reels coming out of China directly from manufacturers and smaller brands. However, it's hard to trust the reviews on AliExpress and Temu because, or I don't know why, but people tend to put 5 stars to the Sugliang reels as well. That's pure plastic, 2 ball bearings. I don't know. People seem to just either it's like bought, like purchased reviews, or people just kind of enjoy it no matter what. I'm not sure. But this is by all means a quite popular reel. Um, the Cast X, the first one, has sold, I think, I'm not sure how many, but like only on AliExpress it's to the tens of thousands, I'd guess, if you put them all together. And this one has already sold a lot as well due to its reputation of being a good reel. And all in all, I have to say I do agree. It seems to be quite well made in many aspects. Um, it's a bit on the heavy side, I'd say, but I actually appreciate that. It's not by any means like super heavy. It's just not. It's not like the Cast King Sever light, if you know what I mean. It's not extremely light, and I enjoy that because that means that there's actually some material in here. Um, you get 6 ball bearings and the needle enter reverse bearing. Sorry, my neighbor thought this was a good day to start drilling into concrete. Um, there could be one more bearing in here, admittedly, by the main gear, but I'd say it's kind of nice that it doesn't have bearings here in the handle because it's just unnecessary, to be honest. It doesn't make it any smoother. It's just a point where things can go wrong, and these sort of small cheap bearings that many Chinese manufacturers put here tend to just kind of rust away because it's so exposed. So for me, I'd rather have the bearings where it counts, which means inside of here. So 6 bearings, could have been 7, but it's still very smooth, to be honest. It's a smooth experience. Um, the magnets are actually very strong. You can see them here. This one is a pivot, so it's gonna stay attached. But you can see the black dots, those are the magnets. There's some coloring to the magnets as well. You can also see the hybrid ceramic ball bearing, and it is in fact hybrid. You can hear on the sound that it's ceramic balls inside, and yeah, it's very smooth. It's gonna make a bit more sound, but that's fine with me. It's gonna help you cast a bit longer and have a more controlled cast. So I very much appreciate that. These magnets are insanely strong actually, and out of all the reels I've had and bought from China, including the Haibo, which is like a high standard brand from China, I think I paid like $100 for a reel from AliExpress when I bought the Haibo Overlord or Overload. And this one has better magnets, and I paid about $20 for this. So, you know, you can see it even bends the plastic a bit up just touching one of the magnets, and it's 9 of them, so they're very strong. And you can actually tell, I'm just gonna make sure the line doesn't get caught here. You can tell when you put the magnet brake all the way to the top, you can even feel it in the reel handle, like very, very noticeably. So you're not gonna have issues with the magnet brake, trust me on that one. This little latch down here, sorry if you can't see it, it's hard for me to record this way, but it's all I got. It's kind of a nice bonus that you don't have to unscrew anything, and it's not just a super cheap little flimsy one they used to put here. So it's kind of a nice option. So yeah, if you have it, now I have it like middle. If you have it 0, there's like no resistance at all. Look at this. And if you put it all the way up, it's not gonna keep spinning at all, and I can even feel it in the handle. If you're wondering about that sound, it's the line that's touching when I'm spinning it. The drag knob's quite nice as well. You have the drag sound. Now I'd say personally for me, I would have liked I would have liked that sound to be more on the downside, not as distinct as this. And that's only because in my head, I know that parts that are rubbing, especially when they need to make sound, and any sort of like clicking system will have some wear and tear to it. And you can actually kind of feel the bumps, or you can feel them quite well in the handle. So for me, that's a bit much. I know that's gonna wear out in a year or 2, and it's gonna become less noise, which I guess is still fine. It's just I don't like the idea of things rubbing against each other in that way. But yeah, it's working. It's the same sort of clicker you get in all of the cheaper reels from China, and I'll show you in a second when we pull this apart. I'd say though that the main downside to this reel is this little knob right here, which I actually have altered myself because I couldn't bear the idea of having it that way. And it's the clicking system for this is just on the cheap side. Used to be like a plastic spring with a small little notch on it that rubbed against another sort of plastic part, and for me that just, it ended up being that when you tighten this harder, you made it harder to twist the knob because of that click system, because you were pushing the plastic pin into the plastic cogs, and the click got louder as you tighten it and harder to twist. Not sure that it's actually supposed to be that way. I don't think it is. But anyway, just two nylon plastic rings rubbing against each other to make sound is just not my cup of tea. I'd rather have it silent and knowing that it's gonna last longer. And also doing this, changing the parts in here to just a small metal washer with the glass fiber little plate there, just made more sense to me, and it made it so that I can tighten it both harder and like with smaller twists, because when you had the click system, you kind of had to go one click to make it stick, and so the adjustments became like too large when you were at the end. And for me, this is better. I'd rather have it this way. You can order like these sort of parts from Temu, and especially on AliExpress you can order like spare parts, so it's not a big issue. You can order these that will fit because they're all like standardized. You can order these from uh, manufacturers that are making these knobs for Abu reels or Daiwa reels or whatever. I'm pretty sure it's gonna fit. Honestly, they're all pretty much the same. But to me, anyways, it made more sense to have it like this. And beneath this little metal plate, I actually have a small rubber O-ring that sort of dampens the effect until you get to the end, so that you can find like micro adjust it, and that made more sense to me. Anyway, so I can't tell you exactly if you are going to enjoy that or not. I'm just saying that that's definitely a weak point of this reel, and if you go with a standard one and you don't change it or you don't order another one, you can probably pretty much expect that one to wear out within a year, because that's just how it works. You can't have a knob making clicking sounds with plastic on plastic. Something that you need to adjust every time you change the weight of your lure as well, so you're gonna be using it frequently. You can't have that like all plastic. It's not gonna work. So yeah, something to keep in mind. Now, if it wears out, it's still obviously gonna work. Like, it's not gonna fail on you just because the sound stops. But to me, that's just a slight annoyance, and yeah, I'd rather have it this way. All right. So anyway, without arguing more about that, let's dive into the reel, into the inside of it. I'm going to remove the spool. Here you have the other hybrid ceramic ball bearing. Very nice bearings, actually. You can see that you have a small spring here that pushes this side panel or this side out when you open it, and then it's still attached like that. Kind of smart. I guess it works. Not much to it. Handles made of aluminum. I like that. Many of the cheaper carbon fiber handles are too cheaply made. Like, no, I'm not even sure if it's carbon fiber on the most inexpensive reels. Everything here is kind of standardized. There's not much to say about it. Let's see, the nut is a number 10 and it is reverse threaded, so keep that in mind. You untwist it to the right, righty loosey, lefty tighty. That's the handle. That's the drag knob, and that's actually where all of the clicking sound comes from. It's built into this one. And this is plastic as well, so yeah, this one's gonna be plastic on plastic as well. Only difference is I'm not gonna be adjusting this quite as much as I'm adjusting the tension knob here. And honestly, if this breaks, these are very easy to find on AliExpress and pretty much standardized as well. So for like $2 you can get a new one. That's okay with me. I also like that it does have a spring beneath here. So it's not just the spring washers that you have, but it's an actual spring as well to keep this, yeah, to get a more even feeling when you're tightening it, and kind of just makes sense to me. Here you have another reverse threaded nut. It's a square one made of aluminum. It's the one that actually puts tension on the brake, or on the pads inside, whatever you want to call it. And as you can see, if you twist this one upside down, it fits right into here. So this one makes the sound and helps you adjust, but this one is doing the actual braking. You have a lot of small washers, or what do you call it, spacers here. You have two regular ones on the top and the bottom, and in between them you have the two metal washers, the ones that are slightly bent, and will help you with the braking tension. The main sort of shaft here seems to be made out of aluminum. At least that's what it looks like. It doesn't look to be brass to me. Doesn't have that color, and it honestly feels quite light when you hold it, when you take everything apart, so I'm pretty sure it's aluminum. The main gear, however, is gonna be brass. And you can debate whether brass or aluminum is better. Some of the higher end reels have aluminum because they are precision machined, so it works out in the end. But if they're not going to be machined with that sort of precision and those tolerances, it's probably better to have brass, because then you won't have as much like sound coming from the gears. Aluminum is a bit harder, and honestly it's a bit more wear resistance if it's properly made. If it's not, it's gonna make a hell of a racket, and it's just not worth it. So either you do it properly or you stick to brass. And honestly, I don't mind that they stick to brass. The only difference is that brass weighs a bit more, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not looking for the absolute lightest possible reel, at least not when I'm paying $20 for it. All right, so we removed all the screws. You have two standard here, one down here, one behind the spool by my thumb here. And then we can remove this side. Here you have the two springs. They tend to stick to that side because of all of the grease. That's okay, but they're actually loose and they stick onto these pins. Inside of here, it's pretty much standard. You'll recognize all of this if you've ever opened up a bait caster. You have one bearing here. You have the anti-reverse bearing here. Then you have the disc stacks for the brake and the main gear. Let's remove those. It's a pretty nice ball bearing, to be honest. It's sealed, it's quite a decent size, and it seems like it's well made, so that's good. You also have one extra washer here, or extra carbon brake disc. And that one is actually the thickest one too. So this one is kind of thick. Listen. That's good. Those inside of here are not, and that's also one of the downsides, I would say. Because you can tell if the brake pads are cheap or not, and I would say that these are on the cheaper side, at least in here. You have here you have the mechanism that makes the sound, right? This is a spring, sort of spring washer. This one is bent like that. So when you put pressure on it, it's going to rub along those cogs here and make that clicking sound. And that's what you can expect from these cheaper reels. If you bought a reel for, I don't know, $10 from AliExpress or Temu, and it says it has a drag clicker sound, or a sound coming from the brake, it's gonna be this one. There are some other designs that you can get from the reels that are maybe a bit more expensive, but still not expensive, like Kingdom Micro Monster Reel, I think it's called. Some of them have a better design, I would say. Then again, those also tend to take up more space. So those reels, some of them even just have 2 carbon discs, and I'm not sure if that's a better option, to be honest, because then you're putting a lot more pressure on those discs, and they're gonna do all the heavy braking. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. Either you have a cheap sort of sound system, or you have a cheaper braking system, and I'm not sure. I think this will work just fine. And I guess the positive thing about this is that these are so common nowadays, that I think it'd be easy to get your hands on some spare parts eventually when they fail. But as you can tell, everything is pretty much standardized. Main gear, brass, steel, what do you call it? Spacers, washers, plates, whatever. Steel for the one that closes the latch as well. And then you have the carbon discs. These ones are, as you can tell, quite thin and flimsy compared to the thick one you had in the bottom. So that's what you can expect. One pretty good one, 3 kind of okay ones. Still carbon fiber, you can tell it's real, it's not fake, so it's gonna do the job. Question is how long they'll last, but honestly, I'm not sure you can expect better from some of the higher end reels as well. I mean, being inside of this reel, I can tell you that at least here in Sweden, where the prices are going like insanely high for standard fishing equipment, this reel would pretty much cost, it would pretty much cost like $100 here if you bought it in a store. And I mean, paying 20 for it makes it worthwhile waiting those sort of 3 weeks getting it from China. Now, as I've stated many times before to people asking about these reels, like, oh, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it if you bear in mind that you're gonna have like, it's always going to be a bit of a gamble, because China and quality control don't really go hand in hand. They're pushing out like thousands of these reels like a day, to be honest. So the percentage of reels that arrive damaged or broken is going to be much higher than what you'd expect on the local market, because they quality control it for you before they send it out to the store. But it's all made in China. We know that by now. It's just you're going to have to do the quality control. And if anything is broken, you're going to have to talk to the manufacturer and send it back and get a new one and whatnot. Which can be kind of annoying since you already waited 3 weeks for it. But that's the way it's going to be. Inside of here, you have another bearing. Seems to be a well-made one as well. Not much to say about it. You usually have one at that place if it's even a decent reel. The rest of it in here is mostly plastic. I'm gonna go ahead and guess nylon plastic to sort of be able to take that wear and tear. That's okay. The gear ratio makes it so that the pressure on these cogs is gonna be quite low, or the force here is not gonna be very high, and that's okay. So many reels have these out of nylon, and I think it's pretty much standard even on the higher end reels. It's gonna last. This is not gonna be the part that fails on you, honestly. Before that, you're gonna wear out your brake discs or the drag clicker system, or even the button here. is probably gonna fail first. That system, by the way, is made of plastic as well. This one is brass. Does have a bearing down here. It's a double bearing system, they call it. So this one fits down here into this bearing quite nicely, actually, small tolerances. And then into the bearing here. So it's locked in place. So even when you remove the spool, you can still turn the handle and it's not gonna make a hell of a racket. Some of the absolute cheapest reels don't have that. So if you buy a reel for like 10 bucks, yeah, it might be that you need to have the spool inside to keep everything in place. That's kind of the worst scenario you can find on baitcaster reels, I would say. But yeah, as you can see, you have the standard sort of small springs here that account for the clicking here. Will work just fine. I guess there are other systems with other springs, but this seems to be the standards. It's low cost, does the job. Some of the higher end reels might have another material here. You can have metal, probably aluminum, and then like this one, some sort of end cap and hardened steel. This one has a little play here in steel that engages on this one when you start reeling. Like when you do this and everything's in place and you turn the handle, that's where they touch. So they kind of they made it so they didn't have to have metal all the way, and I guess that makes the reel lighter. I don't think that's going to be a concern in any way. As I said, there are other places that will wear out much, much sooner. So all in all, I would say pretty standard inside. Okay drag system. Nice feeling to it. Strong magnets. It's going to be a blast to cast with this one. It's going to be a blast to reel with this one. Some minor inconveniences with like the knob, and like the drag clicker might wear out in a year or two. It's fine, you can find replacement parts as long as you know what you're doing. Is it worth the 20 bucks? Absolutely. Absolutely. Every day I would buy this over a $100 reel here in Sweden, to be honest. Partly because I enjoy like the engineering that's coming out of China right now, because they don't have the same sort of bureaucracy governing their engineering process. So I mean, go back a few years, you didn't have any sort of like clicker system in your brake. Now they all do. It's nice to see that development. And also I very much enjoy putting some pressure on our sort of higher end brands here in Europe, because they're just they're so overpriced right now, and they're getting away with selling things from China by just rebranding them, and it doesn't sit well with me. I'd rather order them like this. So yeah, that's the entire inside of this reel. You can pop off the front plastic here too if you'd like to. Like that. I'm not sure how standard that is compared to other reels, but you can pretty much assume that you're going to have some small plastic parts on all reels. The rest of it is graphite, I can tell you for sure, because I've already worn out some of the places where the screw goes in, because I tend to over tighten screws. I never learn. And you can tell that it's graphite, because when that happens, you get a very special sound and a very special like black powder coming out of these holes. So it's graphite, and I guess that's what you want, and not ABS plastic. Some of the absolute cheapest reels are going to say like, oh, it's graphite, it's carbon fiber, blah, blah, blah. And then it's going to be like 99% nylon infused with some carbon fiber. But this one isn't. It's actually graphite. It seems to be the same that I had on my Aubrey Revo reels. They have the same sort of feeling to it when you strip out one of those holes. And yes, I've done it on my Aubrey reel as well. As I said, I never learn. But it's graphite, so it's good to know. Underneath this one, and I would like to take that apart for you, but honestly, I'd rather just clean up this reel, re-grease it, and put it back together for my own sake. But underneath here, you have a small plastic bushing, whatever you want to call it, and you could have a bearing at that place, and it's pretty much going to be the same size as this one, I think. I'm not sure about the specifications, but I've seen other videos on YouTube with people showing you how to replace this bushing with an actual bearing, so you can get a 7+1 bearing reel instead. That seems awesome. I would love to do that. Only problem is I don't have that specific bearing right now. I'll probably order one in the future. So then if you go online and you're wondering, like, should I get the Seasir Cast-x2 or the Seasir masonry that says it's 11.1, blah, blah, blah. Keep in mind, they're pretty much the same in here. Only difference is this one is either a bearing under here or a plastic bushing. And then you have 4 in the handle for those reels. Here you don't. And honestly, I very much prefer that you don't have bearings here. Because you don't have enough room to put a decent bearing in here. No matter the reel, you're going to have the small, not that great bearing. It's not going to make a difference in the feeling when you reel anyway. And since it's out in the handle, it's going to be exposed. It's going to be exposed to the elements. You're going to get water on it sooner or later. And it's going to start like gunking up on you. Trust me, I've had that before. As you can see, this one spins very much fine without bearings. So yeah, I like this handle more. So keep in mind when it says 11.1, you're going to have bearings on all of these places like this one. One extra here that you could change yourself in this one, and then just the handle. So this reel is pretty much the same as a masonry. Maybe, I think the masonry might be an aluminum frame reel. I don't really care about that right now, at least, because this is supposed to be like light jigging for perch and stuff. So having it made of aluminum doesn't really make a difference to me. Graphite will stand up to the task just fine. And yeah, that's pretty much this reel. Very standard brass main gear, aluminum main pinion. No, it's not the pinion, whatever you call it. That one, aluminum. Graphite body, many small plastic nylon parts, fine. Good bearings overall, 4 out of 5 stars, I would say. If I were to rate this reel on AliExpress, I would give it 4 out of 5 stars. I remove 1 star because you could have a bearing down here, and because the tension knob is kind of a design. Otherwise, great reel, definitely worth the money. I hope that was enough info and not too much rambling about other stuff. If there's anything else you'd like to know about this reel or other reels from China, like AliExpress reels in general, you're more than welcome to comment on this video and ask. I have some experience in that field by now. And I can tell you what brands to try out, what brands to avoid, and stuff like that. All right, I am going to clean this now and put it all back together. Have fun fishing, guys. I'll see you out on the lake.